Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Anupama, Professor at Department of Economics, Punjabi University, Patiala. I am here talking on behalf of Dr. Phlendra Kumar Sudan, Professor, Department of Economics, University of Jammu. I am going to talk about the module Adapting Urban Settlements to Climate Change from Demography of Climate Adaptation. So students, we are going to discuss about the exposure of urban residents to climate change in different types of regions. We will also discuss about the risks they are exposed to and how these are managed. As per the estimates of the United Nations, the urban population growth is projected to increase very widely from 2000 to 2025. The low and middle income countries are likely to experience a net increase of 1.6 billion people in their cities and towns. The high growth in urban population is expected to exceed the rural population growth in these countries up to the first quarter of the current century. The United Nations also predict that in the next 25 years, after 2025, the low and middle income countries will have an additional 1.7 billion urban dwellers, with a declining rural population in these countries. In this scenario, the vital questions are: where will this massive urban growth take place? Is it likely to be located in the regions of poor countries that appear to be environmentally secure, or in regions likely to feel the brunt of climate-related changes in the coming decades? So this module aims to quantify the exposure of urban residents in LECZs and to understand the likely implications for their health. To analyze the urban risks in LECZs and drylands and mapping populations at risk, and to suggest measures to advance the efforts of cities and towns to adapt to climate change. In the subsequent discussion, we will talk about the current locations of urban dwellers in Africa, Asia, and South America in relation to two of ecologically delineated zones: the low elevation coastal zones and the arid dryland regions. These zones are projected to face the full force of climate change. The low-lying cities and towns close to coast will most likely to experience increased risks from storm surges and flooding. The arid drylands are expected to experience increased water stress and extreme heat. The hazards related to climate change will present multiple threats to human health. The climate risks will be particularly harsh in the cities and towns where protective infrastructure is lacking. In order to evaluate the risks that global climate change presents for urban dwellers in poor countries, it is important to understand the locations of people who will be exposed to these hazards. It is also important to identify the most vulnerable among them to give priority for planning. The planning for improvements in urban drainage, sanitation, and water supply need both spatial and population data. The urban fertility and rural to urban migration will increase the population of towns and cities. This will add further to climate risks in the low and middle income countries. Therefore, the national strategists need to be made aware of the implications of locating special economic zones and promoting coastal development in environmentally risky sites. Population mapping. Till recent years, the data required to create a global map of the population exposed to climate risks had not been drawn. With large-scale collaborative efforts by the United Nations Population Division, the Global Rural-Urban Mapping Project, that is GRUMP or GRUMP, has developed a comprehensive global population map. As a result, population data for very low and middle income country can be mapped in terms of disaggregated administrative units. In case of cities with a population of 1 lakh and above, information on population growth over time has been drawn from the most recent version of the United Nations Population Division's Cities database. The reach of the data has been extended to include hundreds of additional observations on small cities and towns. In the combined dataset, each urban settlement is located in spatial terms by latitude and longitude coordinates, which also indicate the spatial extent of the urban agglomeration. This is derived from remotely sensed satellite imagery. After identifying their locations, it becomes possible to determine whether all or part of city and town population is situated in the low elevation and drylands ecozones. The possible pace of urban growth in these zones is analyzed using the United Nations City Time Series supplemented by a large collection of demographic surveys. The demographic surveys provide additional information on urban fertility and mortality rates. The population data could be combined to estimate the number of global rural and urban dwellers living in coastal areas within 10 meters of sea level, which is called the Low Elevation Coastal Zones or LECZ. This is an elevation above the currently projected rise in sea levels, but often lies within the reach of cyclones, storm surges, and other indirect impacts of sea level rise. With the help of population data, we can refine the coastal zone analysis and extend it to cover urban residents of the drylands ecosystems whose total population substantially exceeds that of coastal zones. Let us discuss the urban risks in LECZs and drylands. It is projected that seaward hazards would increase in number and intensity due to climate change. The coastal areas are disproportionately urban. Therefore, it is especially important to quantify the exposure of urban residents in LECZs and to understand the likely implications for their health. Drylands, the other vulnerable ecosystem, contains far larger populations than found in the LECZs. Most of the discussion on climate change in drylands has focused on the rural population and its implications. What will it mean to be an urban resident of these drylands? The low elevation coastal zone. Over the next few decades, the sea level will gradually but inevitably rise. This would place large coastal urban population under threat globally. By 2100, an increase of 0.2 to 0.6 meters in sea level will be accompanied by more intense typhoons and hurricanes, storms, surges, and periods of exceptionally high precipitation. Many of the large cities of Asia are located in coastal areas that have long been cyclone prone. For example, in 2005, there were massive floods in Mumbai. Karachi also witnessed massive floods in 2007. Storm surges and flooding also present a threat in coastal African cities, for example, Port Harcourt in Nigeria and Mombasa in Kenya, and in Latin America, for example, Caracas in Venezuela and Florianopolis in Brazil. A coastal flood model used with the climate scenarios developed for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change suggests that the population of the areas at risk and their income levels are the crucial factors in determining the health consequences of such extreme weather events. In developing countries, risks of urban flooding emerges from number of factors. These are impermeable surfaces that prevent water from being absorbed and cause rapid runoff, the general scarcity of parks and other green spaces to absorb such flows, rudimentary drainage systems that are often clogged by waste and which in any case are quickly overloaded with water, and the ill-advised development of marshlands and other natural buffers. When floods take place, hazardous materials contaminate floodwaters and spill into open wells, which elevate the risk of waterborne respiratory and skin diseases. The poor in urban areas are usually more exposed than others to these environmental hazards. The housing they can afford is likely to be located in environmentally riskier areas. Such housing still affords less protection and their mobility is more constrained. The poor also face further indirect damage as a result of the loss of their homes, displacement, and disruption of livelihoods and networks of social support. Some of the flood-related health risks are increases in cholera, cryptosporidiosis, typhoid fever, diarrheal diseases, etc. There has been increase in cases of leptospirosis after the Mumbai flood of 2001, 2001 and 2005. The excess risks of these diseases due to flooding are hard to quantify without better baseline data. The problem of water contamination by chemicals, heavy metals, and other hazardous substances are significantly high, especially for those who live near industrial areas. In figures 1 to 3, the location of cities and large towns in relation to the low elevation zone for several important metropolitan regions has been mapped. Figure 1 presents a broad scale general idea of the low elevation zones of China near Beijing, Tianjin and Shanghai. This is the region of China where the extraordinarily successful growth strategy has perhaps concentrated high population and more production without due consideration of the upcoming environmental risks. In this figure, low elevation coastal zones are depicted in medium blue shading. Urban areas are shown as points of light or patches of yellow or brown. Figure 2 shows how The low elevation zone bisects Ho Chi Minh City in southern Vietnam. Inset also shows the low elevation coastal zone intersecting Ho Chi Minh City. Low elevation coastal zone is depicted in blue. Urban areas are shown as points or patches of light shading. Detailed administrative boundaries are indicated in light shading. Figure 3 depicts the cities and towns in low-lying coastal regions of Bangladesh. In this figure, the LACZ layer has been made semi-transparent to show the underlying layers. Thus, the blue color is not uniform. The low elevation coastal zones are shown in medium blue shading. Urban areas are shown as points or patches of light shading. Drylands. Drylands are characterized by low, unpredictable, and erratic precipitation. The expected annual rainfall typically occurs in a limited number of intensive, highly explosive, highly erosive storms. Figure 4 depicts drylands ecosystems around the world, which covers 41% of the surface of the earth and provides a home to some 2 billion people. The developing countries account for 72% of the land area and 87 to 93% of the population of the drylands. Nearly 45% of the population of this ecozone is urban. Water shortages are already apparent in drylands ecosystems. There is an estimated 1,300 cubic meters of water available per person per year, well below the 2,000 cubic meters thresholds, which is considered adequate for human well-being and sustainable development. In regions like East Africa, where climate scientists predict increases in precipitation, the rise in temperature is expected to cancel out the effects of greater rainfall. As a result, in some regions, the frequency of rainy season failure will increase. In the dryland areas, where rivers are currently fed by glacier melt, the flows from this source will ultimately decrease as the glaciers shrink, rendering flows in some rivers seasonal. The cities, like those in the Andes and in the areas fed by the Ganges and Brahmaputra rivers, will eventually need to find new alternatives. There has been severe water stress in drylands ecosystems. The urban poor find it difficult to secure access to water. The national water scarcity directly translates into lack of access for the urban poor. The quantity of water resources available per capita displayed a weak and unexpectedly negative association. According to McGrahan, there is considerable case-specific evidence of cities with plentiful water resources where poor households do not have adequate access to affordable water, and cities with scarce water resources where poor households are comparatively well served. In the same way, if dryland cities increasingly turn to water conservation and demand management measures in future, it is far from clear that this will automatically bring benefits to the urban poor. McGrahan cautions it is often assumed that water saved in one part of the urban water systems will be transferred to meet the basic needs of deprived residents in another part of the city or the town. But first, even if demand management reduces supply problems within the piped water system, the households with most serious water problems are typically unconnected, and getting them adequate water is likely to require infrastructural improvements. Second, the reason they are unconnected is likely to be because their needs are not economically or politically influential, and freeing up water within the piped water system is unlikely to change this. Third, if conservation is being promoted in response to water supply problems, then there are likely to be competing demands for the saved water and quite possibly a need to reduce water withdrawals. In short, it is extremely unrealistic to assume that water saving measures will yield water for the currently deprived unless this is made an explicit and effective part of a broader water strategy. Therefore, for example, if the response of government to increasing water scarcity was to invest in a cautiously regulated piped water system that reaches all urban dwellers, the most vulnerable residents could actually benefit. On the other hand, if the response is such that it places greater restrictions on access to the existing piped water system, the most vulnerable residents would almost certainly suffer the most. There are multiple intervening social, political, economic, and technical factors that complicate the situation and make it difficult to anticipate the consequences for the poor. In drylands ecosystems, the water stress has important implications that reach beyond the access to drinking water. Numerous cities, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, have become dependent on hydropower for much of their electricity. According to Showers 2002, hydroelectric power is a major source of electricity for 26 countries from the Sahel to Southern Africa and a secondary source for a further 13. Hydroelectric dams are, however, vulnerable to drought when river flows are reduced. Cities and towns in countries from a wide range of climate are affected by drought-induced power shortages in the 1980s and 1990s. Moreover, in several nations, urban areas receive electricity from hydropower dams beyond their national boundaries. National drought emergencies, therefore, can have regional urban repercussions. Lome and Contano suffered when interior Ghana's drought reduced power generation at Okozambo Dam. Safriel and others explain other probable impacts of climate change in drylands ecosystems, which includes reductions in water quality and a higher frequency of dry spells that may drive farmers to make greater use of irrigation. As rise in sea level induced by global warming will affect coastal drylands through saltwater intrusion into coastal groundwater, the reduced water quality in already overpumped aquifers will further impair primary production of irrigated croplands. As a result, the cost of production in agriculture will increase, which may in turn cause prices to rise, reduce employment and earnings, and possibly encourage both circular and long-term migration to urban areas. Mapping populations at risk. The drylands are home to about half of urban residents of Africa, irrespective of the size of city. In India, 54 to 67% of urban residents are living in drylands. However, in South America and China, much lower percentage of all urban dwellers live in drylands. A considerable proportion of urban residents live in LECZs, although the figures are lower than for the drylands. Amongst all urban population living in cities of 1 million or more, the percentages of the LECZ range from 9.7% in South America to 26.6% in China. Urban population density. There are significant implications of the density of the urban population, particularly in coastal areas, in terms of the costs of climate change adaptation as well as mitigation strategies to reduce emissions. The denser cities may cut back the use of scarce resources, including those of ecozones, both within and near the city. This cut will depend upon many factors, including the quality of urban governance and management. They may also produce less climate damaging emissions. To some extent, density lowers the per resident cost of providing water supply, drainage, sanitation, and other infrastructure important to urban adaptation. But at the same time, the denser cities also pose health and management challenges before government, especially in large cities that lack adequate infrastructure. According to the GRUMP-based estimates, population density is markedly higher in LECZ cities. The LECZ cities in Africa and Asia have significantly higher population densities. In South America, cities located wholly or partially in LECZ are more densely populated than other cities. However, for cities that are partly in the low elevation zone, there is not much within city difference in density, which is evident in the LECZ and non-LECZ area. In these cities, the average density exceeds that of dryland cities and the cities in other zones. Poverty and vulnerability. The poor people living in urban areas are more vulnerable to climate change than other urban residents. The data required to measure poverty-related climate vulnerabilities are not available on global basis. Figure 5 shows the GRUMP data available for Medan, Indonesia's third largest city, located on northern coast of Sumatra. The figure exhibits the low elevation coastal zone in cross-hatching. Underneath can be seen the administrative units, whose population sizes are indicated by shading. Darker shades represent the larger populations. Outlined areas are the GRUMP urban extents as identified through satellite imagery. This collection of data provides a detailed picture of population exposed to coastal risks. However, this does not differentiate residents on the basis of their levels of income, which is an important factor in determining whether they have adequate sources, for example, housing well enough constructed to withstand at least moderate flooding and storm surges to fend off climate-related risks. In order to highlight the issue of vulnerability, Figure 6 depicts the poverty data into the picture. In this figure, in the shading of the administrative areas, the proportion of residents of Medan who live below the All Indonesia poverty line is shown. The darker colors show higher proportions of the poor. Such maps can offer useful guidance to policymakers and planners which are needed to make decisions about where to allocate scarce urban adaptation resources and intervention efforts. In case of ecozones, some differences in urban population growth emerge in Asia. City growth in LECZ is significantly faster than in the coastal zone, but no significant effect can be detected either in Africa or South America. The city growth in the drylands ecosystems is different from the coastal zone in all three regions. In cities outside Asia, the climate-sensitive locations tend to grow faster than elsewhere. The LECZ result for Asia is therefore something of a special case, although for a region whose total urban population is vast. In Figure 7, the forecast of city population growth rates in Asia have been summarized, which distinguish between cities situated in the LECZ and those outside this zone. The population growth rates of LECZ cities in Asia are initially higher than non-LECZ cities. Both types of cities are likely to experience slower growth in the future, which is primarily due to projected lower fertility rates. Thus, according to these forecasts, a convergence is to be anticipated between the LECZ and non-LECZ city growth rates in this region of the developing world. So students, let us sum up what we have learned from this module. The climate science data and models have continuously improved in accuracy. More detailed estimates are becoming available on the spatial distribution of climate-related hazards. At the same time, there are far less data gathering and modeling in the social sciences to document exposure and vulnerability on a spatially specific basis. With the help of recently mapped information on the populations of cities and towns in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, simple maps have been compiled of urban settlements in both the low elevation coastal zone and the dry land of these world regions. The climate hazards are projected to occur in these zones will be significantly different. The settlement patterns in these zones are also quite different. The exposure to flooding and other extreme weather events in the low elevation zone will depend not only on the settlement patterns but also on how urban populations and their arrangement across risk zones change in the future. In Asia, a large share of the world's urban population growth is presently taking place. The Asian cities in the low elevation zone have grown faster than have those outside this zone. The rates of city growth are likely to decline as fertility rates decline. The lower transport costs of trade provided by the LECZ have proven to be a powerful force attracting migrant labor and capital. In case of China and elsewhere, it remains to be seen whether climate change will introduce risks that offset the economic logic that has driven coastal development for millennia. The adaptation policies and investments adopted by national and local governments will have a say to influence urban growth. Climate change in drylands will be manifested in complex ways. In many places, the net effect will be to increase water stress. The results are hard to project and, as with coastal settlement, will depend in part on how people and their governments respond to scarcity. Overall, the drylands occupy substantially more land than LECZ. Although population densities are generally lower, a significant share of urban dwellers live in drylands than in the low elevation zone. There is also considerable variation in the dryland shares according to region. The preliminary city growth estimates reveal that in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, dryland city populations are growing neither significantly faster nor significantly slower than in other zones. That's all with this lecture. I hope you must have enjoyed it. Thank you.